We have an instant case of somebody who has petitioned the courts, and he's seeking some relief. She is seeking some reliefs because they've been in a domestic relationship. The domestic relationship, according to what is in court.
I don't know why you decided to call it domestic relationship, though, but that's fine. Go ahead.
They are in a relationship.
I think that's better.
She said promises were made to her.
Right.
And now some of those promises have been reneged upon.
Sure.
Now, in situations where there's a boyfriend, girlfriend, side chick, and somebody may be married or otherwise, what within the remit of the law are the remedies?
So, without causing any fear and panic, let me make the general commentary that indeed, sometimes circumstances notwithstanding, once there is an understanding between two parties, and that understanding has been backed by some amount of forbearances or sacrifices from either side, and other person has relied on the promises made by the other side, it is indeed a good course of action for the defaulting party to be either sued or in any way being compelled to make do his promise, sometimes regardless of the circumstances. Now, when it becomes a relationship of this nature, then you have to be more specific in order to be able to obtain the sort of relief that you're seeking. So if you go into specifics, if it is a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, even in that relationship, if promises are made.
Because this is a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship.
Exactly. So if I rely on what I've also read in the suit filed, then it's safe to say that where promises are actually made for a marriage to be, in this particular case, a marriage to be...
There's a promise of a marriage.
Yes.
Following a dissolution of another marriage.
Yes.
So there's a promise of marriage.
It looks like there's a promise of marriage, but it's contingent on the dissolution of another. Now, that makes it a bit complicated. However, if you take the complications out, a breach of promise to marry a person is indeed a basis for a suit to be brought against you. So if you are promising anyone out there, which is a normal thing guys sometimes would do, you should be mindful of the sort of promises you make, because it could be a subject of a legal tussle between you and the other person in court.
In this instant case, there's a promise of a lump sum working capital to start a business, pay for accommodation or rent for 3 years, buy a car, pay for 3,000 Ghana cedis as a monthly stipend a month, buy the plaintiff also a ring. Now, so if I'm making such promises, for example, why should I be taking on?
There are circumstances that if you make these same promises to a woman or even to a man, you cannot be taken on. So where you are in your bedroom making out, if you make these promises, the court takes it as not a promise that ought to be kept. In fact, that may be kept because of the mood, the very specific circumstance. So those promises, the way you are smiling looks like you really love this subject area. So
I think everybody is trending on social media. I'm very much interested in
so
this.
If it is if you're making out in regardless of the place, whether in your car, in your bedroom or in a hotel, wherever, if you're making out and you make these same promises or more, you're allowed, in fact, under circumstances, you are even allowed to buy God for another person if you can. Or take the person to the moon.
Are they likely to
But those ones
test?
cannot be a subject of a suit. In fact, indeed, if it becomes a subject of a suit, it will be thrown out most likely. But where these promises are made in a normal setting that you are not compelled, either by way of mood psychologically, or because the person has her hands in your ears. And so these ones are made normally with the intention to keep them. Now, with such promises, and when you also make an attempt to even keep some of them, then indeed it becomes a subject of a suit. It can be a subject of a suit, and you may be compelled to fulfill them if it turns out that indeed you intended keeping them. And this one, there's a clear case of a car being bought, part of a rent being paid, and indeed part of the stipend being paid. The other side relies on it, has relied on it. You you've made steps to fulfill all these promises. You cannot turn around and say that the person cannot. I mean, you should not be expected to keep them. It'll be very difficult for you to be able to discharge yourself out of that.
Okay.
But unless you're able to prove that indeed these were made under some benevolent circumstances
Some extraneous circumstances.
that you were clearly not compelled to do. I mean, otherwise you can be made to complete.
In this day and
your
age,
task.
where many of these promises are also made on platforms, chat platforms, for
So
which
there are
you can have screenshots, etc.
Put it simple, there's
They
evidence.
are just not oral promises.
So you shot yourself in the foot by providing evidence of your communication. So you can no longer even. So in fact, in fact, it actually confirms what I was saying earlier. So you were not making out. Clearly, this shows that you were in the comfort of your home or your office, giving all kinds of promises, and the other side was possibly, like ladies would always do in a parliament with other women, deciding your fate at that moment, and you keep making the promises. You keep coming with yet loftier ones. Once she accepts it, it's difficult for you to renege on these things. Unless, of course, she did not accept the proposal being made on the basis of those promises. I don't know whether you get the difference.
I get
She
the
could
difference.
accept you not on the basis of these promises, but because you are Roland Walker.
Okay.
That's all about it.
All right.
Being Roland Walker comes with a lot of other benefits, and so
No, actually, it doesn't come with any benefits.
So
apart from my
that
name,
may
there's
be
nothing really.
that may be a different. I do not know about that.
Now you're making me uncomfortable. Can we end the conversation?
So unlike being just a Sabdulai, which may not come along with any other benefits. So
Yes.
so
All right.
So, yes.
So we're just saying. So the basis for this conversation is to whether it can be a subject of a court suit.
indeed it can.
Yes.
It can depend on the circumstances. It's
All
not
right.
a blanket statement to say that simply by making a promise to a person, whether a spouse or otherwise. So if you make a promise to your spouse, for instance, and the different circumstances, you know all the authorities from Balfour and all those ones will tell you that indeed those promises cannot be kept.
Merit and merit. Okay.
God bless you.
We're here.
So, so generally, domestic promises cannot be a subject of a suit.
Yes.
But
That's the rule.
that's the general rule.
Okay.
But where you're able to distinguish that domestic setting from other settings, then unfortunately you bring yourself to the fold of the exceptional circumstances where you may be compelled to fulfill them.
As a lawyer talking. On that basis, we'll take a break. We have a big conversation, and the conversation is about cervical cancer. We also want to get ourselves educated on many other related things as well. But make sure that when you're giving us your messages, you add the hashtag TV3 New Day. As you go search us across our social media platforms, TV3 Ghana. It's when we have to go for a break. When we come back, we do have more right here on the show. Do stay with us.